Hey, this is a day. Thursday, January 21st, and also Wednesday, January 20th, my advanced class. We're going to go through it. For those of you who are watching this at home, in case you've missed it, make sure you pay close attention to who is in the date. And she would really like it if you talk to her next time you see her, because apparently she thought it was really cool, and she kept looking at the ceiling saying, I'm the bomb, over and over again. And then she made all of us say it together. And so I think it'd be best if all of you sort of figured out who it was, and then you could go talk to her. So the next time she sees a man who accidentally shaves his head with the wrong clippers, she'll think twice about mocking him, knowing the fact that he has the power to attack her too. I did not sharpen that chair. Hey, anyway, we continue from there. Let's get into it. See, we are going to begin some mythology shortly. For those of you, as far as remembering where you sit, well, the 3 kids currently in class is probably pretty easy. Because you each get like one half of the room to yourself. There's 3 kids. Yes, it's called 150%. And so I will put the whole seating chart thing up again next week because some of you guys are at home right now, but I believe you're supposed to be coming in next week. So I'll put the seating chart again. Plus, you only came to my class one day this week, so it's kind of weird. You are going to need the piece of paper and then the writing utensil. Those of you who are watching this on video because you skipped my class for some reason, you are going to need a piece of paper and a writing utensil. You're also going to need the sheets you can print off of Canvas or Remind. There's a blue sheet and a white sheet. On there, it actually calls it blue sheet because I always make it blue because, you know, it's like blueberry flavored. And then the white sheet to make things easier on that one. For today's, you're only going to need white sheet. Blue sheet is for next week. I was just handing it out to you guys early because I no longer trust them like all of a sudden saying you don't have to come to school and making life awful. But white sheet is the one that you're going to want today. If you have this one, that's the one that's going to make your life a little bit easier. And again, if you have digital version, you can just go on to Canvas and go clicky clicky from there. Now, and blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're going to be doing on your little piece of paper thing. You are creating a chart where you're going to have 4 up and downy columns. And so your 4 up and downy columns are going to be called gods, places, things, other stuff. It looks like this. Gods, places, things, other stuff. So you're going to create 4 up and downy columns on your piece of paper. Label the top of the one gods, 1 places, 1 things, 1 other stuff. What I'm doing right now is called stalling for the slow kids because I'm trying to buy you time to get there because this screen is going to disappear and go back to the other screen. So you're writing down columns that say gods, places, things, other stuff. You're going so slow and repeating it. Yes, and I still have kids staring off into space. We're going to get there. I have faith. Home children, this applies to you also. Gods, places, things, other stuff. What? You're a terrible person. You're not a terrible person. Oh, you're throwing a stick. I'm not. That's you for stick shaming. All right. Now that you've made your 4 column-y things, here's what you're going to do with your 4 column-y things. You are going to put these 20 words into whichever column you think they're supposed to go. You're going to take a look at the word chaos. You think chaos is a god, a place, a thing, or just other stuff. And you get your choice as far as it goes. To help you, 1, I will go through and read the words to you because maybe hearing them makes things a little bit easier. 2, I'm well aware many of you have no idea where these words are supposed to go, and you are completely unfamiliar with them. I'm fine with that. That's why this is called guessing, which I'm okay with. To help you, my 3 living children who are here in the room, you have these things called posters that you are welcome to look around the room at. Those of you who are at home, you don't have posters, so that makes things sad for you. But we also have this thing called white piece of paper. Some of the words will be here on white piece of paper, and you can look on white piece of paper. You can flip paper over because there should be 2 sides to it, and there's also other side of white piece of paper, and you're welcome to look there. Technically, for those of you at home, you could Google it, but that's a lot of work I would not recommend doing because really the only way to get it wrong is just to not write the word down. Your other option would be this thing called eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a category by its toe. and you can just try to figure out which category it's going to go into. Or you could just randomly guess and put it into whichever category you think it is supposed to be. That's what I'm going to. All of your categories are not going to be the same length. Some of them may have 15, some may have 3, some may have 1. Some of the words will go into multiple categories. Like you may get like Zeus, and you can put Zeus in both other stuff, and you can put Zeus into a god. And then we're going to get into arguments about you guys thinking you know things about Greek mythology, and then you're going to yell at me, and then I'm going to have to yell at you, and we're going to get a chance to bond, and then we're going to have to hug it out afterwards and stuff like that. So that'll give you an idea. Let me read the words to you, and then we're going to give you a chance to go through and do the righty-righty thing. So our words are, I'm going across, chaos, Chronos, Hades, Underworld, Titans, Vulcanize, Pandora, Narcissus, Styx, Side, Harpy, Ernest, Charon, Minotaur, Centaur, Tartarus, Olympus, Epimetheus, Satyr, Atropos. Those are all the words I'm going to have you place. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Those of you who are watching me in digital YouTube world, I'm going to pause the recording, because if not, it's going to get real boring, because you're just going to be watching my face stare at you for a few minutes, and it gets kind of creepy. So instead, I'm going to pause the recording, and then we'll just restart. So those of you watching it on YouTube, because you skipped my class because you hate me, you're just going to have to pause it, and then you'll just restart it once you put it into the different categories. All right, let me go to pausing. And hey, and we're back to more of the talking and stuff like that, and we're going to have to move on into learning and fun stuff like that to help you guys out. And all right, there's that one, which we'll come back to. Now you've seen it. All right. So now, hopefully you know where you are. If not, I'll put the screen back up there again in a second to try and help you out. Things I need to cover with you as we get into Greek mythology before we start talking about the network. One, yes, Greek mythology. Almost every time that I say, hey, we're going to get into a Greek mythology unit, kids go, what? Greek mythology? Which I just reply, yes, Greek mythology. To which they usually follow up, well, isn't that social studies? Which I have to reply with, yeah, it can be social studies, but here's the joy of teaching English. We're not controlled on what we teach, as long as it qualifies two things. One, does it involve reading? Two, does it make children think? As long as I can connect reading and thinking, I get to teach it, which is why I get to bring in an article about an old man that punches a child, because we read it, and then we got to think about it, and I went English, check and shoot. And so the same thing happens here with Greek mythology. We're going to read it. It's going to require you to think, so it works. For the three of you in here, how many of you guys have actually had a teacher teach Greek mythology? Not like you reading it on your own, but then like up here, like yelling at you like that. Right? For those of you who have had, and for those of you at home, I'm just curious, if you had a teacher teach Greek mythology to you, yay. It means that you're going to have some background knowledge already. It'll make some of it easier. Those of you who have never had it, yay again. I get to start fresh and give you guys all new information to try and help you out. For those of you who worry that it's going to be all boring because we cover the same information, well, one, nothing I do is boring. Two, wow, you started laughing already that first meeting. Two, everything I do is very much different than how other teachers do it. And then three, suck it up, Buttercup, because apparently you laughed at me and that makes me want to cry on the inside. I said crying on the inside and you raised your hand. Jagger. I know, just making fun of you. Technically, it's made up Greek mythology. It's not actually from Greek mythology, but it's made up that character and threw it into God of War. And so a lot of the things in the God of War game comes from Greek mythology, but it's more like the Hercules cartoon from Disney. If you guys, the one with the blue flaming hair guy, almost everything in that movie is wrong and made up. I mean, it should be shocking. What? Disney makes stuff up? Yeah. Well, amazingly enough, video games kind of did too. And they're like, God of War, yes. And they're like, well, we got a God of War, and let's just make up the rest of it. And so a lot of the other stuff thrown in there sort of made up. So Kratos is just random Greek name of guy who goes out there and tries to stab people with two swords and really likes bloody scars. No, the lights have gone out. We're on that. Okay, we're good. One of the reasons why I like Greek mythology, I know, right? I know. It's the time. It's that time. One of the reasons, sorry, kids at home, random scary man is coming in here and he's threatening my children. We're just gonna let it happen.
And I'm looking at your post.
It's the same thing. There, I know. What is chat babbling now? What is wrong with these children? So, everyone dies eventually. Well, yeah. Oh, wait, no, everyone does eventually. That's all. No, you're talking about dying. What is wrong with you? That happens. And let's see if what is wrong. Oh, he's gone. I just saw it, Jay. I was gonna say hi for you, and he said, "What, Jay?" He just left. You know how Mr. Stump is. He's just a hater. And so here, one of the reasons why I like Greek mythology is essentially it's a whole bunch of short stories where the characters overlap with each other. As opposed to us doing the short stories where just like standalones. Here, one story goes into the next story, goes into the next one. So it's not a novel, it's short stories that all connect to each other. The posters that I showed you, they stay up. I'm going to leave the pictures up on Canvas. You get to use them. When we're in class, you get to use them. The whole idea is when I start telling you stories, starting today, I will use laser pointer thing, and I will point to the posters and then tell you the story that connects to it. The idea being is that it's supposed to be a learning thing. So that way, when you see the poster again, it brings the story back to you. So when I get to the story of Hermes and how he came to be and all the stuff that goes into it, I'll keep pointing at it. And then when it comes time for a quiz or homework, if you look at the poster, it's supposed to sort of re-spark your brain and help you remember things. The drawback is half of you are make-believe children that are online. So that makes things a much tougher thing because you're not going to see the pictures as well. Then you just get to go, yay, COVID, and we get to roll with it from there. So we'll do what we can, but it's going to happen from there. Yes, you can go make a sandwich, just be fast, or take your thing with you so you can keep following along. And then that is so nice of you. What is now? There's babbling about random things. And then there, you are going to have questions, especially those of you who know anything about Greek mythology. You are definitely going to have questions because it's going to interact stuff like that. The problem is I can't cover all of Greek mythology in a single day. And you're going to want to as we get farther in. You're like, well, what about Hercules? And he did it. I'm like, we'll get to that eventually. But I heard that Ares, yes, he did. We'll get to that. So pretty much every question you ask, I'm going to answer with, we'll get to that. Because we'll get to that. But if I tried to teach it all in a single day, it'd be an 80-hour day and 3 of you would die. So because of that, we're going to have to spread it out and we'll eventually get to all these different things. So a lot of you, when you raise hand, means I'm probably not going to call on you, not to be mean to you, but I already know the answer to your question. The answer to your question is, we'll get to that. So it just saves me time to just not call on you. Just don't take it too personally. You're a special child. So with mythology, if you are unaware, mythology by definition means religion. It connects to a religion in some way. We have Christian mythology, we have Buddhist mythology, we have Greek mythology. It just means the stories that go into and build up that religion. If you're a Christian and you are familiar with Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, that is a story that builds into the biblical thing of Jesus. Here, we're going to get into all of these stories that deal with these gods. They're called gods because to the Greeks, they worshiped them and they were gods, sort of like that Jesus dude. And so it's that sort of same idea. There is no culture today that still worships Greek mythology. There is no island you can go to where they're still like, mighty Zeus, come down and give me a hug. It's not out there. Anyone who is still worshiping Greek mythology is wearing a really tight white coat and living in a padded room. So it's not a thing that still exists today. Although I did have a kid in first period try to argue that with me. And she's like, I believe in Greek mythology. And I'm like, ooh, well, there's a difference between believing in Greek mythology and praying to the gods. She was like, I'm a Wiccan. And I'm like, okay, please through. And so whatever your thing may be, I'm just telling you for the most part, it's not a thing that exists out there unless you decide to start it up again and go on that Greek mythology TikTok. And then that's like a thing you want to make. Then more power to you, boo. I'm not going to try and stop you. All right. Also, Well, normally this is the unit that costs kids a lot of B points because it gets kids all worked up and wanting to talk as we get into the stories, because a lot of the stories are super entertaining, because it basically deals with adults acting like kids and being immature and making really poor choices and drama and killing people. And the kids get all excited and they start yelling at me because kids aren't used to enjoying being entertained and learning at the same time. But I've got a feeling that's not going to be an issue on blue days because there's only 3 of you staring at me. But maybe on red days, for one of you, it may be a bit more of a struggle, and we'll sort of see what happens from there. So I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue here. And also the last thing I have, most of this unit is going to be me telling you stories. I do have some stories you are going to have to read with your own eyeballs and brain. But a lot of these stories, what do we call the process that makes stories change over time? We talked about fables. That same thing happens here with Greek mythology. There's multiple stories of how these things came to be. This guy over here, Hephaestus, who is the only god to be crippled, in Greek mythology, there's 2 versions of how he got crippled. One involves his mom, one involves his dad. And so both stories are considered correct. But Mr. Broviak, which one's the real story? Being is that they're all made up stories, they're both real. It just depended on which one you were told as we went along. So that's the thing that we're going to get into, these different versions. On the poster that's in front of my podium down here, there's one of the gods that has a giant X through it. And kids always freak out. They're like, it's a naughty god. It's not a naughty god. It's the fact that Aphrodite, the girl over here in pink, there's multiple versions of how she was born. I'm going to teach you the most common accepted one. The one on my poster was a rare one. I have no idea why they put it on there. So I crossed it out because it just kept confusing kids. Now, I thought you told it was this one. I'm like, it is. Like, that's not what it says on it. So eventually I was like, all right, I just crossed it out. So that's why that one's crossed out on there, because there's different versions of all. It also means for a lot of you guys who know Greek mythology, you're going to try and throw down with me. You're like, Mr. Broviak, that's not how it happened. There's every chance the version that you heard is a correct version. It's just not the version I am doing. It doesn't mean your previous one was wrong. It just means it's not the one that we're doing. What's up, Jagger? You've been so patient. Yeah, that's the thing that you had the issue with of all that. I mean, technically, you can call them whatever you want. Did you think they were Broviak points? I mean, that works for me. I'm not going to stop them from being Broviak points, but the original idea was they were behavior points. No, that was just your Wi-Fi, Jay. You said, what? Hold on, and then you dipped. So I assumed that was just like a thing you were doing. So it was not me kicking you. That was your Wi-Fi kicking you. I know. Okay, I can dig that. All right, so then to there. The thing is, a lot of Greek mythologies, I mean, me telling you the stories out loud. For many of you, it's going to be a treat because it's going to involve me telling you stories, which you find highly entertaining. The drawback is going to be, for those of you who are, well, those of you live and in person, it's not going to be an issue because me telling stories is way more entertaining than anything you're going to get in like math or science. So you're going to get here and you're like, an hour and a half of you telling stories? Rock off the bad self. For those of you who are at home on Zoom, it's much tougher because me telling stories is probably not better than you playing Call of Duty Warzone. And so it's going to have a tough time with me competing against that one. So for those of you at home, if you don't pay attention to the stories, you're out of luck. There is no handout I can give you. Your handout is go back and watch the hour and a half long YouTube video. So if you tend to tune out on Zoom, the only way for you to get caught back up is by watching the videos. I will keep recording class. I will keep posting them. I'm just letting you know. I am fully aware that a lot of you guys on Zoom completely dip and stop paying attention. The problem is on mythology, the only way to get this stuff is by listening to me tell the stories. And if you don't listen to them, you're just going to be out of luck. All right. Yes, I am fishing for views. I'd much rather kids just sit in my class and pay attention. But apparently kids have a tough time doing that. I don't need my ones of views to go up. Ugh. Why not? Apparently Warzone's awesome. To each their own. Hey, maybe I'm a Roblox man. Whatever your particular choice is. Wow. Wow. All of a sudden, hey, like the camel dances. If I like playing Roblox and it brings me happiness, I don't need you throwing shade at my Roblox server. All right, and it's there. Am I still recording? Yeah, I'm still recording. All right, here, I have already created your homework assignment for Friday. So it is all, this is what it is going to be. It activates today after school. So at 3 o'clock today, it unlocks for you, for those of you who want to turn it in early, or maybe it's at 7 o'clock tomorrow. I think it's tonight. I think I sent a reminder tomorrow at 7 a.m. I think it unlocks today after school. But anyway, this is what it's going to be. You have 2 questions for your homework assignment. Jay again? Which is weird because I can see Jay right here. He's in the middle of eating something, but apparently his Wi-Fi booted him in the middle of him eating something. His Wi-Fi is full of the dip. I now have 2 J's in here. That's crazy. Oh, no, other J's gone now. And so here's what your 2 questions are going to be. Question 1 is going to be, what is it in the stories I tell you today in class did you find most interesting or entertaining? Question 2 is, what about Greek mythology do you already think is going to be awful or you hate, or which story do I tell you today did you not like? So that is what I'm looking for, is your 2 questions. What I'm looking for is complete sentence, complete thought, referencing things we talked about in class. Did you actually pay attention? If your reference is, in Harry Potter, they have centaurs, and that's the bomb diggity, that's great, but we're not talking about it in class today, so that one's not going to count. You have to make sure you're actually referring to a thing we talked about in class. I'm seeing which kids paid attention and then which kids can follow directions. That's your homework. I figure I tell it to you early. That way you already know the answer. And then when you get to do my thing, instead of having to spend a half hour on it, you can just go tappy, 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 done. And then be done in like 3 minutes. Jagger. Who what? Not for me. I don't know how your other classes work. I'm not giving you homework. I'm just giving you the thing that's efficient. Yeah. Yes, I see that with your hand. By best, you mean 3 o'clock after school today? Yes. Then you're not till 3 o'clock after school today? Because I don't trust my 5th and 7th period to just tune me out and do the homework right then instead of doing it after school. So if you can, I'm sorry, do you think that stops kids from just randomly doing it? Exactly. All right. Hey, we're done with our break, and now it is time to actually learn. All right, so now, to here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, you've already written these words down into the different spots. Covering it doesn't stop me from seeing it. That's really low key though. So we're going to go ahead and have you pick which spot you think it's supposed to go in. If you have it in the wrong spot, right? We get to chaos and you put chaos and gods, it's supposed to be in places. I need you to throw your paper away and then start over again. Or just write it in the correct spot. Or circle it and draw an arrow. My preference would be the 3rd one because it's a lot less work. But for the others of you, crumpling up your paper and starting all over again may be the better way. And we'll see what happens from there. All right. For those 3 of you that are here right now, you guys are going to raise your hand to vote where you think it's supposed to go for each word. And then I get to give you a little story that goes along with it. As an example, random piece of paper on my back. Here we go. Number 1, chaos. Take a look at your paper to see where you put chaos or where you pretended to put chaos. And then raise your hand if you say gods, places, things, other stuff, scared to vote. Very honest of you. You're in luck. Chaos goes in all 4. Wherever you put chaos was the correct spot. It is a god, a place, a thing, and other stuff. Mr. Roviak, how is that? So here's how. In Greek mythology, here's how their origin story was as far as they believed. In like the whole Christian thing, you've got the Garden of Evil and that Adam and Eve and stuff like that, and that evil little snake thing. In Greek mythology, they didn't have any of that. Before we had a planet, before there were stars, before there were gods, there was nothing but a swirling ball of nothingness. This swirling ball of nothingness was called chaos. If you look on your little family tree thing at the top, right there, it says chaos. If you look over here on this family tree thing, At the top, it says chaos. In Greek mythology, chaos was the first thing to exist. Now, you're right, on that one, it does not. It starts a little bit later in Greek mythology. It doesn't go all the way back. With chaos, I understand it might be hard to imagine a swirling ball of nothing. You go, Mr. Broviak, is it a ball? Yes. Is it nothing? Yes. So to help you imagine what a swirling ball of nothingness would look like, imagine pudding, and just take a giant ball of pudding and just like and then spin it and then turn it into a ball. And that's what chaos was. Oh, chocolate pudding, because we're not crazy tapioca people. So it's going to be a swirling ball of chocolate pudding. And eventually, this pudding existed for, well, we don't know, because we didn't have time invented yet. Every time chaos went to check its watch, it was like, oh yeah, I've not made one of those yet. So it just kept going forever and ever until one day it split like a giant amoeba, those things you studied in science. And it was like, I need a friend. And it split to form the first two gods. Again, on your little handouty sheet, it goes from chaos and it goes down to Gaia and Uranus. Those were the first two gods that existed. Again, over here, chaos, it created Gaia and Uranus, the first two gods. Well, Gaia is Mother Earth, which is a place. Uranus was Father Sky, which is technically a place also. So if chaos created gods, you have to be a god to create a god. And it was also swirling ball of nothingness, so it's other stuff. It created the earth, which is where all the places come from. And then technically it's a thing because it created the gods, which created all the things. They all came from. So you can technically put chaos in any of those four places. All right. Jagger. What's Gaffa? It's Gaia. It's not Gaffa. You saying it multiple times. It's Gaea. It doesn't. It's just because it has a dotted line, you know. Then let's go to Chronos. You saying it multiple times, so it's not making a thing, but it's adorable. You can look up there and it makes it easier on you. So let's go with Chronos. We have gods, places, things, other stuff. The four of you who are scared to vote. Chronos should go into gods. I'm just going to go into there. So Mr. Broviak, I want to yell at you. So hang on there, children. So we get to Chronos, who is going to, well, one over here above where Stravinsky is. Chronos is the god that's right here who looks like he's wearing a cheerleading miniskirt while he's trying to go golfing. It was a thing in Greek mythology because it made you feel pretty. And so that's where Chronos is. He was also the first god to invent killing your parents, because when you get really bored and you get grounded, you have to have a thing to do. And so not both your parents, because that's greedy, just your father. And he also invented the hobby of eating your children. But that's not his fault. They were tasty. And so after you have one, it's really hard to stop. How many did he eat? Only 6. And then after a while, you kind of have to stop because you get like a really full belly. So now part of the issue some of you are going to have is, Mr. Broviak, that Chronos is spelled different. That's a different god. Well, here's the issue. Remember that whole oral tradition thing? In Greek mythology, all of these names were not written down. They were just spoken out loud. So there's multiple spellings of all of these gods. For some people, if I pass down the story of Chronos to Mina, he spells it Chronos. And if someone else tells the story of Chronos to Erica, she hears it as Cronus. But then Tyler hears it, he's like, what? C's? Crazy people, it's with a K. KR, and all of those are correct. They're all the same god, all spelled completely differently. And on a quiz, what spelling should we use? Yes, that's the joy, is that all of these different spellings work. So as long as you're close, we can figure it out. So I can spell Chronos as Zeus. No, that's completely wrong. That's a whole different god. So it has to be at least close enough to be able to figure out, or you're not going to have any luck from there. So make sure it's spelled close enough for us to be able to figure out to make things a little bit better for you. All right. Yes. That's right there next to you. That's a recycling bin. Yes, right there next to the recycling bin. If that brings you happiness, sure. Let's go to Hades. On this one, I'm going to make you vote, or I charge you points. It's going to make you be a better person, and you're going to woman up, man up, or just up. Hades, figure out where you want to put Hades. I don't have to go all grumpy at you because you're going to be brave. And we have gods, places, things, other stuff. Which one did you vote for? And actually goes in 2 spots. Hades is both a god and a place. It is God's Hades, God. And now, let me give you guys again a little background on this whole Hades thing. When we get to Hades. Hades, well, let's back up again. Those of you who are familiar with Hades from backing up again, I've realized from the conversation with kids the last day or so that most kids who know Greek mythology know like 3 things from Greek mythology: Zeus, Hades, and Hercules. There's like the 3 things that most kids are able to take away from it. Go you. If you're familiar with the Disney Hercules movie, blue flame hair guy, in that one, they made Hades a bad guy. And he wants to go around like taking over the world. Or in Percy Jackson, the same. In Greek mythology, real Greek mythology, Hades was not evil. He was not a bad guy. He wasn't trying to take over the world. He was not trying to kill anybody. There was nothing bad about him at all. In Greek mythology, Hades and Hercules are actually friends, like high-five each other kind of friends. I know. The Hercules movie, the cartoony one, in the real Hercules story, Hades is not a bad guy. He's friends with Hercules. There is someone trying to kill Hercules, but it's not Hades. It's Hera, Zeus's wife. Isn't that his mom? No, because Zeus was friendly with a different person, and that made his wife grumpy. There's a lot of friendliness in Greek mythology. I'm not going to go into detail what friendliness may be. You can find out in your wellness class. I believe there's a unit where they explain how friendliness happens. And oftentimes when Zeus was friendly, a small child would come from this friendship. And Zeus was friendly, and Hera did not approve of his friendships. So she decided the best way to teach her husband a lesson was to kill a baby. I mean, who hasn't been there? And so that's where the issue comes in. And so in the actual, apparently Disney was like, that's not appropriate for children. So they changed it and made Hades the bad guy. Hades is not evil. What Hades is that alternative emo kid that wants to sit in the back of the room and just wear the black eyeliner and paint his nails black and just ignore everybody. That's who Hades is. Over here above where Cameron is, this is the picture of Hades. He's not trying to kill people. He's literally like thinking of poetry and wanting to play on his bass guitar and just sit there and not have anyone talk to him. The problem is people kept talking to him. If you imagine dark emo kid who sits in the back of the room, you're like, why are you wearing black? Why are your fingernails black? Why is everything so black? What's it? He's like, ah, and he hits you. You're like, oh my God, you're so mean. Like, no, if you just left the kid alone, he'd be fine. Hades was the same way. If you left him alone, he'd be fine. It's just people kept bothering him, so he got grumpy. So that's where Hades comes in as a god. Also turns out, Hades is not very creative. I'll get to in 1 second, Amanda. So Hades got to control an area of the world where he got his own kingdom. And when the other gods approached him, they're like, hey, what are you going to call your kingdom? Which he replied, Hades. They go, no, that's your name. What do you want to call the place where you live? He's like, Hades. Like, I don't think you understand. Hades, like, fine, we're just going to call it Hades. So Hades ends up living in a place called Hades, and his name is Hades. The street he lives on is called Hades Street, and it's actually in Hades, Illinois. And it just sort of made things much easier for him. It showed you his driver's license. It just had Hades for every line, and it made it really easy when he got pulled over by the cops. So that's sort of how Hades works. Amanda, what's up, Amanda? Oh, hang on. I forgot. I had to Eli everybody. There you go, Amanda. What's up?
Hades isn't evil. He's just misunderstood.
There you go. Very much so. Really misunderstood, but we'll get there. She said misunderstood, and Flippo raised her hand. What's up, Flippo? He did. Zeus was a very friendly god. He made more friends than anybody else. Mr. Broviak, it looks like he was friends with his sisters. He was. He, again, was, hey, when you're friendly, you don't let anything stay. Hey, listen, someone had to make Alabama. So apparently that's just sort of how it begins from there. You are not petitioning something, Eli. You're just going to have to wait, child, and keep yelling at me. So that's where Hades comes in. Let's go to our next one, which is, oh, no, that's just on that part. So we can't, we need a whole nother thing for all of his friendships. Those are just his friends who became Olympians. He had a lot of other friend babies that were not Olympians. That's just a small sampling of it. Let's go to Underworld. Again, if you don't vote, I get to be mean to you, all three of you. So for the Underworld, let's go gods, places, things. Other stuff is correct. Go you. And it should be a place. By the way, again, this connects back to this Hades guy. So the Greeks believed that the gods were, you could actually call them. Unlike like Christianity, you can't just like call up Jesus and be like, what up, dude? And he'd like show up for you. In Greek mythology, you could. You'd be like, hey, Zeus, let's hang out. And there was a chance Zeus would just show up and be like, what's going on, buddy? And he'd come and hang out with you. They fully believe that as part of their religion. The issue is, same thing could happen with Hades. But Hades didn't like hanging out with people. So if you accidentally summoned him and he showed up, he would pull you back down to his kingdom of the dead. And so, you guys ever play Bloody Mary where you go into the bathroom, you turn off the lights, you spin like, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and she pops out of the mirror and grabs you? Fun game. Well, they believed the same thing, but with the gods, and especially with Hades. So they were afraid to say somebody's name, specifically his name. So let's say Flippo dies for some horrible choice of making fun of a bald teacher. And all of a sudden she's dead. And we show up to class the next time, like, oh my goodness, what happened to Sophia? We're like, well, she's dead. She's down in Hades. Are you saying that she's evil? No. In Greek mythology, every human goes down to the underworld or down to Hades, whether you're good or bad. If you're Mother Teresa and spend all of your time saving babies, you go down to Hades. If you're Hitler and you're like, I'm a professional baby kicker, you go down to Hades. When you're down there, you just high five each other. The gods believed all humans go down there when you die. So now that she's dead, we missed her already, you can't say Hades and be like, Sophia's down in Hades, for the fear that all of a sudden the God would hear it and he would show up in front of you. Be like, you said my name? And you're like, no, I meant the place. He's like, but you said my name. Like, well, that's your fault for naming everything after yourself. Like, nah, and he'd grab you and take you back down with him. So we had to come up with a name for it. Humans apparently aren't very creative either. So we go, well, where's Sophia going to be? Like, she's down in she's under the world. They're like, well, that's too long of a name. Let's shorten it. Like, she's Underworld. They're like, nailed it. And they decided to start calling the place Underworld. Also, much like Voldemort, which, by the way, in Harry Potter, it's where they got the idea for Voldemort, and you can't say his name. That comes from Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, you could not say Hades' name. So they referred to him as the Dark One, or the Grumpy One, or the one we can't talk about. You would never actually say his name. It's the same idea from that. So all of those things connect back to it. So that's where we get Underworld from. Oh, by the way, also, everything connects back to this whole, well, no, we'll say that for a second. I don't like. Let's go to Titans. Figure out where you want to put Titans. Woman up, so you're going to vote. And gods, places, things, other stuff. And it should be correct. They go into gods. Titans and gods are the same thing in Greek mythology. Did you get that one right? Yeah. Flexing on. So this is one of the things that seems to throw a lot of kids off. In Greek mythology, gods and titans are the same thing. If you look up at these big posters, all of those are titans. Over here, titans. These little posters, titans. They're all titans. Every picture you've ever seen of any of the Greek gods, they're titans. The problem is things haven't changed. Like if you look at that old Hercules movie, They make the Titans like these big monster things. Those are not the Titans. There are these monsters that existed, but they were not called Titans. We're going to get into that one. It's like someone asking you, are you a person or a human? You're like, they're the same. Like, no, they're different. You're like, oh, you're a special child. It's the same thing in Greek mythology. They're all Titans, but we worshiped them as gods. So we just refer to the Titans as gods, but they're the same thing. But I thought there was a battle between the Olympians and the Titans. There was. But you said they're the same thing. They are. I'm real confused. So imagine if all of a sudden the heroes team decides that we're better than the rest of the school, and we decide to rise up and just take on everyone else here. We're like, but they outnumber us. Like, yeah, but look at them. We can take them. And so it becomes the heroes versus Fisher's Junior High. Same thing. The heroes are still part of Fisher's Junior High, but now we're taking on the rest of them. It was the same thing with the Olympians. They were just a section of these Titans who all lived in this one area. They took on all the other Titans who existed and won. But that's a story that we're going to get to. I'm glad that you're a cow. The monsters are called BroviCast. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm trying to ignore most of you little haters on there. Let's go to Vulcanize. Figure out where you're going to put Vulcanize. I know, some of you are getting scared now. It's going to be fun. And gods, places, things. It's like you're all playing chicken with each other. Other stuff. Oh, and you're all correct. Good job. Vulcanize goes into other stuff. Way to be somewhat brave on that one. Chronos. You are correct, Jake. Most of that information is on the right track. Nicely done. So Vulcanize is a word that comes from Roman mythology, which is a little bit different than Greek mythology. On papery thing, on the white paper, if you flip white paper over and look at this side of white paper that has all those words on it, the things that are in parentheses are the gods' Roman names. What's the difference between them? The same difference between English and Spanish. If I say hello or I go hola, it's the same thing in two languages. Pretty much the same idea between Greek and Roman. There are some differences, but that's close enough for now. It's just the idea that it was a different group of people who worshiped the same gods. They just had different names for them. So Vulcanize is just a word that comes from Roman mythology. Actually connects to this guy over here, Festus. Vulcan was his Roman name. A lot of the connections we have today come from the Roman mythology too, as in the planets all connect to Roman mythology. Every planet is a Roman god, and for a reason. If you get to, there's a planet that's really fast that goes around the sun. You know what the fastest planet is? Mercury. If you look on your Olympians handout and you find Hermes, you'll see Mercury written next to his name. The reason is Hermes, this guy over here in the orange and yellow, / Mercury, was the fastest god. He was the speediest one. So when they found a planet that was the fastest around the entire sun, they named it after the fast god. If you've seen the planet Mars, what color is it? Named after god of war, because they thought this was a planet where all the gods died. So they named the planet after the god of death. There is a blue planet called Neptune. You know what god that's going to connect to? God of water. We get to Poseidon because they thought it was a planet full of water. So they named it after a water god. There is one planet which is all dressed in black and farthest away from all the other ones and wants nothing to do with them. Named after, connected to Hades, named Pluto, which is why they named it that one, because it was the farthest from all the other planets and it was all covered in black and it was really grumpy. And so because of that, they named that one Pluto. And so all of the, if those of you who know your astrology symbols, whether you're Cancer or Taurus or Aries, that all comes from Greek and Roman mythology. If you know your constellations, Orion, and then Big Dippers, and all of that, Greek and Roman mythology. So all of those come back to all of these things too. Why not? No kidding. That's why it goes on to next week. Yeah. Gia is an amalgamation of the name. So yeah, Earth actually comes from Greek. It comes from Gaia, that Gaea. It just got changed over time, and instead of calling it Gaia, it became Earth. If you look back at really early versions of it, they actually called it more Gaia than Earth. They didn't change it to Earth until sometime after Jesus came around. I don't know. I have to look on back up. It just sort of got changed over time as opposed to all the other planet names. It's just one of those things. Keep talking. And then so there. Ooh, I think. Hey, we'll stop there. It's 9:36. We're going to finish out the rest of these next week with those red kids, and we'll see what happens with you reddies. And then the blue children, you want to look around the room now and blink a lot so you can capture all the posters into your eyes, and then I will put those up on there tomorrow so you guys get a chance to see them and stuff like that. Red children, you're going to get to see the posters with your own eyeballs. It's going to be great. Virtual children, I mean, you know, whatever. Draw a picture and then like stick it on the wall and then just blink at it and stuff like that. We love you and stuff like that. That's the best we can do. No one likes purple kids. All right, I think that covers from you guys there. For those of you recording, we're going to stop the recording on that one. Yeah, that's why I make